Welcome back to IowaWorks. We've been looking at some examples of potential interview questions. Now let's look at an answer to the question, what would your manager say are some of your weaknesses?
What would your current manager say are some of your weaknesses?
I knew you were going to ask me this question. I don't have a lot of weaknesses to say. He probably would say that I work a little bit too hard. Maybe that I care too much about my job. That's one of them. But you know, I don't really have a lot of weaknesses to say that I can think of. And I was trying to think about it on the way over here. Nothing was really coming to mind. You know, I even prepped for it, and just there's not a lot. So I'm a solid employee.
Okay, guys, what was wrong with that answer?
Wow, how about everything? I mean, he did everything but pop a beer and invite the guy over for dinner. It was just really bad, the rambling, the gum chewing. And some of that's a lack of respect. And some of this may seem so far-fetched, but it's really not. Everything from candidates that are fidgeting and playing with jewelry and necklaces and seem a little bit disinterested and not really listening to questions and fully engaged. And, you know, he was just rambling on all over the place, very arrogant. It's just not the way you want to come across in an interview.
I think another key point, too, is he talked about that he had thought about the response to the answer but never really came up with a plan. And in answering these types of questions, that's something that you always need to think out in advance and go in with some ideas and some characteristics that you can talk about to help have that conversation. There's nothing worse as an interviewer when you're talking with someone and they simply look at you and say, I've got nothing. I've got no weakness. I have nothing that I can talk to you about. You have to have some substance to carry on that conversation.
So everyone does have weaknesses.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's being able to recognize them, or I guess saying it's when you don't recognize them that you really have a weakness that will not support you in getting your position.
But it was really the gum thing that really got to me. I mean, that jumped right out. And that happens in real-life situations. And I think people just don't realize how they're walking into a setting and they start popping gum when you've asked them an important question.
Let's look at a better way to answer that same question.
What would your current manager say are some of your weaknesses?
Probably one of the weaknesses that stands out is the fact that I get maybe a little too detail-oriented on a problem once in a while. Focusing on the details may cause me to overlook an obvious solution to a problem. You know, knowing that that is one of my weaknesses, I think the first thing that I do is look for the obvious solution instead of going directly to the details of the problem, and that kind of prohibits me from missing that solution to begin with. So,
let's look at another less than desirable way to answer a question.
What is something that you really liked or disliked about your last position?
Oh, wow. Disliked. Well, my boss was a jerk. And pretty much everybody I worked with was, well, most of them didn't know their jobs, so you can imagine how hard it is to try to do your job when you're surrounded by idiots. I guess I liked a couple of the people and some of the work that I did, but my boss just didn't give me any support whatsoever, and he wasn't doing his job, so I felt like I had to be doing his job most of the time as well. And nobody got along with anybody. Everybody was gossiping. And I tell you what, I was so glad to get out of that place that I never want to work in another place like that again.
It can sometimes be hard to answer positively to a question like that. How do you think it should have been handled?
Well, first of all, when you've been through a difficult situation in a past experience, you have to remember to take the emotion out of the interview process and just leave that at home. The second thing about it is, from every difficult life lesson that we have, there is something that you've learned through that process. So it's having the ability to identify the positive things that you learned and then translate that into explaining an experience that you've had. I think another key thing here, just to put right up front, is that you should never say anything negative about a past employer, because the issue that the interviewer is going to be thinking is, wow, if you're going to sit here and say all of these things about your past employer to me, if you work for me, what are you going to say about me when you leave my company?
Here's a good example of how to answer that same question.
Tell me about something that you really liked or disliked about your last position.
Well, my last position, I worked 17 years, and the thing that I loved about it was the variety of the work. I had an opportunity to move into several different areas of the business, so was really able to gain skills and experience that I was able to use. I guess the thing to say that I maybe disliked about it was the fact that there were certain aspects of the job where my success depended on somebody else doing something. And sometimes that could be frustrating, but I guess the positive side of that was the fact that it really helped me to learn to be a better team player and to develop relationships with those people to make those things go more smoothly.
When you know you're one of the last few candidates for a job, here's how you can consider responding to a question that sets you apart from others.
We're considering 2 other candidates for this position. Tell me why we should hire you.
Definitely one of my strengths is that I am hardworking and I'm loyal. That definitely sets me apart from a lot of folks these days, even though it probably shouldn't, it does. One of the other things that you should consider when hiring me is that I am definitely trainable. I can learn any computer system, but not only technically, but just in any area of work that you may need me to come in and do. I can kind of go from the area that you bring me into and jump into something else. Multitasker, love to do different things. So I can be trained on anything and would love to be a part of your organization.
Some people can really get tripped up on that question. I think for many of us, it's hard to brag about ourselves. How would you have handled that question, or how did you think he did on that one?
I think he did a great job. He showed that he's willing to be trained, coachable, multitask, and today that is more important than ever. Every company is having to do more with less due to the unfortunate circumstances of our economy, which means people have to be coming in willing to wear multiple hats. And I think he did a great job of very positively pointing out his ability and his willingness to do that.
Sandra, anything else?
I think it was a fantastic response, and just like Nick said, that multitasking is such a key ability right now, and to stay positive and be enthusiastic about the employer, and closing it, him ending by saying that he would love to be part of their company, I think was a great close.
And I think it is important for them to say, I want this job.
Absolutely.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Cassandra, Nick, thank you very much for helping us with those questions, and we'll be right back.